The following presentation was recorded live in Las Vegas, Nevada for the 27th Annual International Association of Square Dance Callers. This is tape 23, Theme Tips.
Water parks and their enjoyment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our only panelist, His Holiness, as opposed to partliness, ladies and gentlemen, the Tony Oxendine. Thank you, the Reverend Most Righteous Tim Crawford. This is a panel on theme tips. I hate to sit. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand, because I hate to sit when I talk. One of the things I found with calling, I watch so many callers, I call it calling without a purpose. I see guys get up, I see it at national conventions, I see it at weekends that I work with guys, I see it at festivals, I see it at special dances. The caller gets up and just starts calling, never having a clue where the tip is going to go. He just starts, or she just starts. Consequently, what happens when you do that? Even if you're sight calling and you're creative, each tip kind of sounds like the one before. There's nothing that makes each tip stand out. And each tip in your dance should stand out. It should stand on its own. Otherwise, all you do is you just got a big conglomeration of 8 times that you're standing up there. A good way to add variety into your dance without adding complexity. Now, sometimes we get the two confused, and we want to interchange the word different with difficult. And we don't need to make our dancing harder. It's hard enough. We've difficultied ourselves out of a bunch of dancers. But there's nothing wrong with adding a little spice, having some variety. The way we get variety in our program, one of the methods of getting a variety in our program, is the use of theme tips. Now, I'm not talking about dressing up like St. Patrick, or the Halloween theme tip, although those could very well be theme tips, I guess. I'm speaking choreographically. You can theme a tip on on any call that you like. And all that means is that you're going to take this particular tip and you're going to feature 1, 2, or 3, or 4 or more calls. You're going to call those calls more than you call some of the others. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that if scoot back is going to be your theme figure, that you have to do it right, left, from a quarter tag, from inverted facing parallelograms. It doesn't mean that. All it means is that you're going to use scoot back a little more than normal. Now, you might want to have a little twist. It's always good to have a little zinger, a little twist. And it's also always good to have a get out, using your whatever call that you're theming. But you don't have to make it impossible to dance. People want to still move. So all you got to do is just have it out there a little bit. Scoot back is a great one to feature, incidentally. Promenade. You can feature, it's so weird because you can actually feature some of the more simple calls. I did just the other day. I did a workshop, and I workshop promenade at a Plus weekend, and then naturally during the course of that dance that evening, I themed promenade into a tip. And you would be surprised what you can do with promenade and make it fun. Yesterday we did a panel on the other side over there somewhere. Larry Cole and I did one on showmanship, and we got into a little choreography, and we themed a tip, or segment of a tip, on a couple of calls. We themed a tip on, how many of you guys were at that panel? Anybody? Perfect. We themed that tip, that sequence we did, on cloverleaf, cross run, and wheel around, and turn through, and half sachet for you. And all that, what you saw in that little segment that Larry did when he set the girls turn through, start through, and the boy cross run kind of thing, would have been the culmination of a complete tip or several tips that those calls were featured. It doesn't mean that he called nothing but turn throughs in a tip. It does mean that he did several turn throughs. And that's all you have to do. Now, you do want to have, when I say, if, for instance, swing through is going to be your theme, well, head square through 4 swing through, that's cool. Side square through 4, swing through. That's cool. Well, and if you just go back and do the head square through 4, swing through, then it gets boring. You've got to come up with something that's not difficult, but something that's a little bit different. Where can you make swing through a little different? Somebody want to give me a hint? Give me an idea? I would love to start this thing off with an Alamo wave swing through. If it was me, one of the first things I would do would be an Alamo wave, and I could tell you exactly what I would call. I would call Alamo left an Alamo style and do a double swing through. Why? Absolutely. It comes out to a right and left grand. I've killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I've featured a call, and I've resolved featuring the call. Somebody mentioned swing through from a left-handed ocean wave. If I had like really good dancers, yes, I might call that. Chances are I would not. I would do left swing throughs, however. You know, from a left-handed wave. I think we don't do enough left-handed calls. I really like that. The same-sex swing through is good. Although that feels just like that feels like a normal swing through. If you look in your standard applications book, how many guys are familiar with standard applications book? Okay. Standard application for swing through is any right-handed wave. We should be able, based on the standard applications book, we should be able to reasonably expect dancers to accomplish the call swing through from any right-handed wave, regardless of arrangement. So, boy, boy, girl, girl, ocean wave should be no more difficult, theoretically, according to the book, than boy, girl, girl, boy, or zero waves. Which, for us, that's a great tool. Now we've got all these waves we can play with. So swing through is wonderful. Swing through feels totally different if you only do 2 couples. What about this as a sequence? Have you ever used this sequence? Heads from a static square, heads swing through and slide through. You ever done that one? Neat way to get to boxes. If they start doing swing through good and they feel comfortable doing slide through, it's a great. But how many times have you ever called from a static square, head swing through and do anything? We don't use it from there. What makes the call neat from that particular setup, from that particular thing there, is the fact that we've called it from a different formation than we're accustomed to hearing it from. Just the fact that we hear head swing through from a static square features it somewhat. Follow that? And we can take any call. I mentioned the fact that I did promenade. Promenade is a great call. See, one of the things that we're missing in our calling, I think, is that we as callers have lost the art of calling. Calling's no longer an art. It's not an art form like it used to be. It's not pretty. We've become too technical with it now, and it's lost a lot of the prettiness. And we are not artists now as much as we are technicians. And I would rather be an artist than a technician because artists make more money. Take Picasso. Did he ever make any money when he was living? Anyway, let's take the call promenade. Let me talk to you about promenade, because what do we do with promenade? One of a couple of things. We do heads promenade half, sides promenade half. Everybody promenade home after right and left grand. 4 girls promenade, 4 boys promenade. Pretty much that's our scope, isn't it? Yes? Can we all agree to that? Okay. Let's look at what promenade is. So if I want to get creative in a theme tip with promenade, if I want to get creative, I can make a couple of little changes. And if I don't want to do the boys promenade, the girls promenade, or the heads promenade, half or side, all I got to do, one thing to make it interesting is change the direction. Instead of saying heads promenade halfway, I can have the heads reverse promenade, wrong way promenade halfway. Feels completely different. It's the same ending formation. So for a sight caller, that's wonderful. I'm in the same spot as I would have had I said heads promenade halfway, but now they've gone about it a completely different way. So that gives me a little variety there. You would be amazed in a singing call. I do this routine all the time in a singing call. I do 3 times through on the figures. I say heads wrong way promenade halfway, sides wrong way promenade halfway, and then when I say okay, 3rd time's the charm. Sides promenade, sides wrong way promenade halfway. Now by that time everybody's getting it. By the 3rd figure. On the 4th figure, I say sides promenade halfway. Now, it doesn't matter which way they go. Some are going to go the correct way, some are going to go the wrong way. They're all going to be in the right spot at the end. So it generates a couple of things. It makes them laugh. which is, and it makes a little showy kind of thing. And they remember that segment. They remember that promenade thing. Okay? You can do promenade from couples. Let's say we had, if you guys can figure this out, what about this? Instead of saying heads promenade halfway, why don't you say heads pass through from a static square, heads pass through promenade halfway. Now let me tell you, that gives a whole different feeling for these people. Now what's the neat thing about that as far as sight calling is concerned? It's a nothing. For us, it's a nothing. So we really don't care which way they go. Now naturally we want them to go promenade direction. Promenade direction, incidentally, is which shoulder to the center? It's always the left shoulder to the center. So wrong way promenade direction would always be the right shoulder to the center. So if I said the heads pass through and promenade halfway, where are they at? They're home. Now, watch this. Heads pass through, wrong way promenade halfway. They're home. But look at what I've created here. Look at this, and this isn't difficult, guys. You know, there's people straight out of lessons. People in lessons can do this. Advanced dancers will break down trying to do it. You call to, how many call A2? How many people out there call A2? Tomorrow night, whenever your next advanced dance is, call heads pass through and wrong way promenade halfway. And see what they do. Now, they may get to the right spot, but about two-thirds are going to get there wrong. My point is, they may get there wrong, and that's okay. I'm trying to entertain them without being boring. See, I don't want to be boring, and I don't want to teach them relay the deucey. That's why, relay the deucey is why we're not good callers anymore. We've become to rely on long, involved calls to give us interesting material. We can't take the little easy calls now and make them interesting anymore. We have to have deuces and boats and diamonds and coordinates so that we can look good. And then we say, no, the dancers want these calls. Well, it's not the dancers, it's us. Because that's the only way we can be real, real good. We have to work on our art, on our craft. Our craft is down there from Ferris wheel and recycle on down. It's not at coordinate on down, okay? If you want to get real technically really good. So work on it. Promenade is wonderful. And the people don't know, and they don't know they've done anything different. You know, they just know that it felt, they can say, hey, that promenade tip was really cool. And that's what we want. That's the whole, now, the rest of that tip, you can say, head square through 4, swing through boy, run, Ferris wheel, pass through Alaman left, like we always do. Or we could say head square through 4, relay the deucey. Swing through boy, run, Ferris wheel, pass through Alaman left, like we always do. As long as, periodically, you say, instead of saying head square through 4, relay the deucey, swing through boy, run, pass through Alaman left, we say, heads pass through, promenade halfway, square through 4, relay the deucey, swing through boy, run, Ferris wheel, pass through Alaman left. That's going to have a whole different feel for it. They're going to think it's all different. Just because you did that promenade in there. Get them dancing that comfortably. You can do things like, if they're really good, you can do things like from a completed double pass-through. I like to have same sexes together. Say we have a completed double pass-through with the boys in the middle. And I have the boys promenade halfway. Well, now that's going to feel real different for them because now they got to go all the way around these girls. I got to do something with the girls, you know, naturally to make it all work out right. But just the fact that it feels different, and it's an easy call. Guaranteed they'll get it. Guaranteed they'll get it. That's the point. We want to give them stuff. We want to give them some variety, but we want it to the point that they don't have to work so hard for it. They may think they're working hard for it, but as long as we know that it's easy, and we know that they're going to get it in the end, that's all that counts. And they think they've done something spectacular. Heads pass through, promenade halfway. Wow! So it's all in perception. It's all in perception. There's tons of little calls that we do regularly that we can play with a little bit and make them so much more interesting. The way we can make a call interesting, one of the ways is to fractionalize it. Is not do all of it. Do part of it. Do-si-do. All right. I think do-si-do halfway is gimmicky. I think you ought to call pass-through. Have you ever called do-si-do three-quarters? Anybody have an idea where you'd be if you called do-si-do three-quarters? Left-handed ocean wave. If I called do-si-do three-quarters from a zero box, in other words, head square through 4, do-si-do three-quarters, where would I be? What would my range, what would my formation be? I have a left-handed ocean wave who'd be in the middle. Boys would be in the middle. So, knowing that, I'm going to help them. Head square through 4, do-si-do three-quarters, back-to-back, boys, you're in the middle holding right hands. Boys trade, girls run, girls trade, bend the line. I'm normal again. Do it several times. Get them comfortable with that. Okay? Neat. It would amaze you the looks on plus and advanced dancers' faces when they start dancing comfortably, do-si-do 3/4. Now, if you do something like this every tip, look at the tools that you have by 10 o'clock. Now, you haven't taught anything, so it's not like they have to remember anything new. All you're doing is taking calls that they already know and theming them in the course of an evening. By the end of the night, by the last tip or so, these people have a working knowledge of all of these calls that you've used thus far. So that the final tip of the evening, you could do things like heads pass through, wrong way promenade halfway, sides, square through 4, do-si-do 3/4, and the boys trade to a left swing through and the girls run, Ferris wheel and the centers wheel around. Now, when's the last time you called a sequence like that? That kind of stuff is really good to me. I would much rather dance that type of stuff than some of the stuff that we do. I can tell you that I would much rather dance it than stuff like head square through, touch a quarter, look at your box. Now, everybody do this part of that while the centers do this part of this. Everybody finish like this and then do the last part of this to an Alaman left. I hate callers that start me, stop and look, check, look, move, stop, look, listen. That's not dancing. It may fulfill the square part of my activity, but it doesn't fulfill the dancing part of my activity. I think dancing we have to move. When we stop, we ain't moving. So I like calls that flow. What about if do-si-do 3/4 throws you in a right-handed ocean wave? What about a left shoulder do-si-do 3/4? Of course. But that would give you a nice right-handed ocean wave. How many of you have ever called left do-si-do 3/4? How many of you in the next week or so are going to call do-si-do 3/4 somewhere? Trust me, it's good. Dancers get it. Dancers get and they get it fast. So you could theme a tip on do-si-do. I mean, that's like call number 3. Imagine what you can do with calls if you put your mind to it. Imagine what you can do with calls that have a little meat to it. 8 chains, spin chain throughs, recycles, flutter wheels, reverse flutters, calls that have some movement to them. Look at what you could do with some of those without being hard. I'm not saying that you ought to theme recycle and take that tip and start doing it left-handed, right-handed, half sashayed, same-sex, mixed sex. I don't think you should do that necessarily. So, but you could do it from a couple of different setups maybe, just to make that tip stand out. That's the whole point in theme tips. You want them to stand out. Do your homework in advance so that if you're going to theme a tip with a particular call, have some resolutions. That's the icing on the cake. Too often, we spend the whole evening or a large part of the evening working stuff, and we never reward the dancers. The get out is the reward. The get out is the cake and ice cream from the steak and potatoes that you've been feeding them all night. And everybody loves cake and ice cream. Give them some ice cream. Let them enjoy it, and let them know they're supposed to enjoy it. We wonder why dancers don't clap for us at the end of a tip. We don't let them. We don't allow them to enjoy themselves throughout the tip. Take the time at home and work this stuff out. If you're going to feature do-si-do 3/4, have a get out for it. It sounds like to me that a do-si-do 3/4, if it threw you in a left-handed ocean wave, seems like to me that a good get out, if I had to think off the top of my head, would be a do-si-do 3/4 to an Alaman left. Now, maybe I'm dense. That sounds like it'd be a good get out, and it sounds like it'd be an easy one to figure out. Anybody want to tell me where that would start? Absolutely. You want a good get out using do-si-do 3/4? Head square through 4, do-si-do 3/4, Alaman left. If you liked, I might want to do it twice. Yeah. Okay. If I were theming scoot back. Okay. That's the whole point. Let's give them the ice cream at the end. There's tons of calls you can do. I wrote some of them down. I saw Jack Murtha do one of the nicest demonstrations of grand square that I've ever seen at a CALLERLAB convention a few years ago. Gave me so many ideas. It was unbelievable. Taught me some things that I didn't know by watching him do it. He did grand squares from like O's. If you guys are familiar with what O formation would be, if you were to take a line of 4 and have the centers have the center 4 dancers only back up and the others stay put, and he did a grand square from there. You know, neat stuff. But You got to do your homework. And that's where we fall down as callers, is that we don't want to do our homework. We want to come up, put our records in our car, go to the dance, put the microphone on, and start calling. That's what we do. We don't prepare. Admittedly, for some of us, not us, some of you, that have a regular job, it's not as easy as those of us that don't have a job. Yeah. Take 30 minutes. Take 30 minutes a week. Jot down steal some stuff. You want to get good material, go to somebody else's dance. And you may not hear stuff that you want to call, but you might find some things that you've been calling that you really shouldn't have been calling, because you'd never danced it. You're saying, well, I always thought this square through 3 and swing through danced okay. I've done it enough. You mean that doesn't fit? You mean this walk and dodge partner trade thing really ain't smooth, huh? Or this right and left through veer right, which could be smooth, incidentally. I think right and left through veer right is as smooth as right and left through veer left, personally. Then again, my opinion, and $4 will buy you a cup of coffee. Pardon? $4 would buy me a decal, and get me in on the award, that thing for $1,000 in airline travel. But anyway, what I do each time to make my tips interesting, I never call without a list in front of me. I keep a mainstream list in front of me. If I'm calling plus, I keep a mainstream and a plus list in front of me, so that I can remember to call the call. See, one of the problems we have that we get boring is we just forget to call some of the calls. We don't think about them. If you have them in front of you in print, it reminds you to call them. So I'll come down and I'll walk up at the beginning of that tip. I'll look down and say, okay, this tip I'm going to theme swing through and scoot back, and maybe square through. And then I'll go from there. Well, then that's my swing through, scoot back, and square through tip. I come up the next tip and I say, okay, this tip's going to be walk and dodge. Now, sometimes you may want to theme 2, 3, or 4 calls, if they're easy. Sometimes you may only want to theme 1 call, if it's more complex. You know, I wouldn't try to theme spin chain through, and 8 chain through, and Dixie style all in 1 tip. That's a little overkill. I may not want to theme spin chain through. Spin chain through is really not difficult to feature. And the reason it's not difficult to feature is because nobody ever calls it. So all you got to do is say, head square through 4, spin chain through, girl circulate twice. And you featured that puppy pretty much because nobody dances it. And the reason you circulate the girls twice on that is... No, because that takes me from a known formation to another known formation. If I say head square through 4, spin chain through, and the girls circulate twice, and the boys run, I'm in a 0 line. If I bend the line, I'm in a 0 line, so I know where I'm at. Don't get lost. Okay? But calls like that, great calls. But you got to sit back and do a little checker work at home beforehand. And I've said about as much as I can say right now, and I'm going to pass it over to my esteemed colleague, with whom I have an immense amount of both respect, admiration, and coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, the Canadian Flash, it is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you the most reverend and auspicious, Timothy Crawford, who is in fact the father of Tom Miller.
That's right. That's frightening is what that is. Thanks, Tony. That was great. I was actually going to say everything he did, so I really have virtually nothing left to say, other than I've got some good ideas. Do-si-do 3/4. I'm going to use that. I didn't know there were 4 parts to it. Anyhow, I'm not criticizing. I'm just suggesting that I didn't know it had 4 parts. Still, I'm not sure. I don't want to focus on choreography because Tony did a real good job of that, although that's part of the presentation, of course. Theming, the objective for a theming, obviously, if you want to take a second to just think about what theming means in your own mind, and then you deal with that, that's fine. Theming can be as simple as actually using the lists. A mainstream dance, if you want to consider that a theme for an entire year, we theme a year around the mainstream program. And it can be as short as a sequence could be. You could theme a sequence like Tony did explaining about choreography. In a given night, for example, I will theme around the obvious things would be holidays and, you know, Halloween dances, etc., those types of things. But the object of all the theming and everything that we do is to present material in a preconceived notion, so that we've already sat down and we've already drawn a roadmap that we hopefully are going to follow. Sort of like, for example, last night at the banquet when I was MC, they gave me a roadmap, which I followed. Lots of detours, but that's okay too. But the idea is that you sit down and you actually do a little bit of homework, like Tony said. One of the things that we don't do enough of is to actually plan the night. Besides the choreography, I think there is a larger portion of callers in general that spend some time on choreography, because that's the one thing that we all can grasp, focus, understand for the most part, and deal with. But it's the other nuances surrounding our calling craft. One of them one of the things that we're deal with is music, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the music as well, but I just want to talk about how we bring all that stuff together. I also think that when we talk about theming, we also are dealing about one of the things that theming does is connects an entire night, or connects a month, connects an entire year, brings it all together, so that in fact the roadmap isn't just as simple as inside of a given tip, but inside of a given night, and also the map takes in the entire year, a world map, a city map, and a town map, if you will. Anyways, the whole objective here is to entertain people, and you can entertain them through different ways. Basically, you deal with it like Tony does with the choreography, and the other part of the presentation is showmanship and all those things that go along with that. So I just want to, I don't have a whole lot of ideas necessarily, because I really don't do any homework in advance of a dance. I just let it happen. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Although that sometimes does happen by itself. But even at a night when I get to arrive at a dance, I try to size up the area, size up geography. Sometimes if I'm calling in New York, I'll try to use calls or music that might be a little more New Yorkish, or if I'm calling in Philadelphia, it would be the same music. If I was calling in Ohio, I wouldn't have a clue necessarily, but in California I would have some ideas. But so I bring all that stuff together, or try to, in a given night. The other thing that I know, after 27 years of calling, I've kind of come to a conclusion about my calling, and I know what I do well, and I know what I don't do well, and I know what people respond well to. Now, and it doesn't always work. For example, I do a German singing call, and you probably don't want to do that in, say, Montreal, where there's a large Jewish population. And I had no idea that people would be sensitive about that, but they in fact are, so I learned a very good lesson there. Now, I don't walk into a hall and just look around and look at somebody and say, "You're Jewish." Obviously, he's not, but, you know, put that away. But those are the types of things that I've learned over time, and one of the things that I do in a given night, or given weekend, actually, I plan the entire weekend, and we all love to use new music. So whenever I get a new piece of music, when I get those records, the first thing I want to do is go give them a whirl. So I go to a weekend and I use them as fast as I can. I may not have even ever tried this record before, but of course I put it on in the middle of the night, or at the sometime over the weekend. But I use it usually at the beginning of the weekend, because I'm going to save my plan for the weekend is to, if I'm going to fail, I want to fail early, so I have the rest of the weekend to win them back. And I do know what goes good for me, and I have that in the bank. It's always in my hip pocket. So if things are going really bad, then I just pull all those things out of my pocket and I use those things. That's always part of my plan. That might be a backup plan, but in fact it's always there. I never plan to fail, but I fail to plan. It's pretty good. I said that right, didn't I? Yeah, I don't plan to fail, I fail to plan. But I actually learned my lesson, and now I do plan. And even last night at the banquet, when I was doing that stuff, I'm sure you saw right through that. That totally was planned. I had that was timed perfectly. I knew exactly where everyone was. I knew exactly the timing. You're believing that. That's good. The only thing that caught me off guard was when Walt Cooley stood up in the audience. I really fully expected him to be to my right, even though I looked to my left, because I knew that he was to my right, and he wasn't there. He ended up being out in the audience. But nonetheless, I just want to, I'm going to just give you an idea of some of the themes that I run. In a given night, for example, if I'm in a group that is an older group, of course, I'll choose my music specifically, very, very carefully. Now, I'll start with a couple patter pieces of music just so I can show you the difference. And believe it or not, some of this stuff is pretty neat. If I go into a group and the group is, depending if they're a younger group, they seem to be full of a lot of energy, I'll use this type of music. I hope you can hear this okay. You've probably heard this. This is Boogie Beat. Have you heard this piece of pattern music? That's the type of music that a young group will respond to pretty well. And I'll use that usually, not young group, but an energetic group, and I'll use that piece of music generally in the first half hour of the dance. Not always the first tip, but because sometimes you can shock people to death just by virtue of the speed that you might use that they're not used to at that point. So I'll also use something that's more familiar with them in the first tip perhaps, but then I'll go to this type of music in the second tip. They start to win them over a little bit. They start to grasp onto me because I am sometimes pretty tough to grasp. And I recognize that. I'm half joking about that, but I also recognize that sometimes I even surprise myself with stuff I say that comes out of my mouth. And in the first tip, especially if I'm excited and I can't wait to call, sometimes I say things and I just wonder why I ever said that. And people are, I kill me, I slay me, but people out in the audience may not think, just it went right over their heads, especially whenever I call in Europe. There's a language barrier. Anyways, so this is a piece of music that I use for groups that are more low-key and just like to dance smooth. This is called Snowflake. I don't know if you've heard this one. There's a real good part in this record, and it took me a long time to go through this record and find out where the good part kicks in. So at the beginning, I usually have them circle left and they get the rhythm. The rhythm goes along pretty nice, and I usually tell them while they're circling left that this sounds very Victorian. I feel like we should be dancing in a castle somewhere. They're dancing along. Let's see if I can get to the good part. Right here. So the music changes actually from that sort of an xylophone type thing. It changes right here into something that remarkably, I didn't know how smooth this would be for dancers to dance. I put this on first as kind of a gimmick. I bought the record for the other side. But right here, there's a minor key progression in there. That's a minor key. It's got neat little sounds to it. It's the type of music that I call the calls to and don't have a lot of filler. It just goes smooth, and then it changes back at the end of the record into what it was at the beginning, which is that xylophone type of sound. But the body of the record is this, and people dance to this beautifully. You wouldn't do fragmental choreography like Tony was talking about earlier. You would just call calls here. And as long as the stuff flows, you can actually even call some intricate choreography as long as your timing matches the record. But it's a really good piece of music. So I choose, as the night goes on, I'll take a look at, or I'll try to figure out how the crowd is responding. And I spend a lot of time talking to people too. I try to get down on the floor and I'll ask them, about where they live, what goes on in the city, what they did earlier, are they tired? I'll ask people how they're feeling. They, if they're telling me that they're tired, then I choose my music differently, of course. There are people who believe, and I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but people believe that when people are tired and down, you should lower the boom and let it rip, because that picks them back up. And I have seen that done. I'm not particularly good at that. Tony, on the other hand, is particularly good at that, and so are a lot of callers, but I am not particularly good at that. So I'll try to... Do you think they're okay back there, or should we go check them? I'll try to pull them up a little bit, but I try to do it through the types of music that I use. Now, the stuff that I have in my hip pocket is basically all contained in one spot in my briefcase, in this case, on this disc. And over the years, I've come across 7 or 8 pieces of music that virtually no matter where I have done these, people have responded positively to them, except for the German one that ends up. But I don't have any Royal records. I don't get those. I don't get them free. But I'll do an entire tip or an entire night with this one particular disc, because it has pieces of music that all sort of have a underlying theme to them, and it's types of dance. So this is, I'll just let you listen to this little bit of this German one here. So I'll have people, you know, depending on the mood, I'll have them bounce a little bit. The music is smooth, sort of, but it's not, in this case, it's more about the type of music. It's a departure from what we normally call, which is a standard country music type of crooning song. I'm not a particularly good singer. I'm not a particularly good caller, so I have to rely on anything I can to do. So I'll use this type of music. And it has, it's got an ethnic undertone to it. It's German.
I'd love to have heard you call some German.
Yeah, man. So, and then I go from that one into this one, which is the Matador, so it's a little more Mexican. So this whole night, this will be one of the singing calls of the night that I'll use. And I have everybody yell "Ole," and they dance along. You know, again, I'm not calling choreography. I'm not talking about choreography, but I'm talking more about just the music, how I planned that night. So then in the third tip, I might go on to something else like this. I don't do this singing call and the German one ever together. If I was a rich man. So I'll use this one, but sometimes I will use them a couple tips apart. But, is it? I've never actually considered using this as a pattern. I guess it would be. You can use anything for pattern, I guess, really. So I'll use that. And then I go to North America. I try to use some North American stuff if I can. So I would perhaps use this one, Mickey Mouse. You all know Mickey Mouse. Everybody's used that. So then that's onshore. Not good callers. And when I'm calling, I sometimes put my records up over my head like that so that people do that kind of silly stuff. Also, I didn't really plan to do that. I do that, yeah, but nobody ever notices. You ever notice how you do stuff on stage and few people look at you? So you have to do that halfway through the tip, and then you see people dance along going, "Hey, look," and it kind of catches on. And this is an Italian one. So I'll do these all in a given night. All those records in a given hour or two. It usually takes a little longer. Then I've got a couple others too, but there are 4, 5 records that are completely different from one another, and then I try to couple the patter part of it any way that I can. Sometimes if I'm going to do the Italian tip during the patter, I'll call with a bit of an Italian dialect, just so that they get the idea. And then then I do the Italian singing call and handle it that way. And then you can do anything like that. I have a summer dance program. At the beginning of a summer dance program, I'll do singing calls or pieces of music that all have the word summer in them. You've got love songs that you can do. You've got all kinds of different types of things that you can pull together. That the idea here is that what you're doing is taking time to take a look at the stuff that you're going to do. Rather than calling one tip at a time and not connecting it to the previous tip or the tips to come, what you're actually doing is drawing a roadmap for the night. Now, every road doesn't lead to a successful end either. Sometimes, people are just, you can never predict people, and unless you know the group, you just have to sort of hope that what you do is positive, but it doesn't always work that way. Like occasionally you'll end up in a situation where you're doing pieces of music. What I really find when I have the problems with this stuff, it's because of the environment that I'm calling in. And what I mean by that is, if during the night I haven't won them over, if I haven't taken the time to give my personality over the microphone so that they can give me back that two-way feeling that you get, some of this stuff doesn't seem to work as well as it could. They like to dance. Everybody likes to dance, so I'll choose music at that point when I know I'm not winning them over. I'll choose music that focuses away from me and completely on how they dance. The smooth music, like that Snowflake that we used. The singing calls that I use are all good country music, the types of music that the dancers just love to dance around. And I can change my direction during a night too if I feel that's happening. But again, it's a thing that you get. I didn't really actually start to feel how the people were feeling until about 10 years ago. I really had some trouble. I think that was also a byproduct of my age. It's difficult at that point when I was in my teens to actually figure out how adults were feeling about the way I was calling. Because the one thing that the square dancers are good people, so even if you do a horrible job, they're going to come up and tell you that you did a great job or a good job to make you feel good, especially when you're just a kid. I mean, they come up and tell you, unless, like my parents never told me anything, they accept the bad nights. And you need those people. And so it took me a long time to really get a sense of how people were feeling. So when I plan my night, you know, if I can plan it in advance, I do, but a lot of times I arrive at the dance and try to get a sense for how the people are feeling, then I start to build my plan for that night. At my own home clubs, it's planned a year out. I don't do micromanagement of the particular evening or the particular singing calls perhaps, but I will plan my entire year out, and I'm sure we all do that on the progression of calls that we will teach over what period of time. You've already hopefully come up to some degree of difficulty with respect to the choreography that we're going to use over a given period of time, and we build on that as we move along, just like Tony was talking about. But essentially, I build that stuff a year in advance, and I do my best to adhere to it. Again, partway through the year, we have a unique problem in Canada where we have people heading south, and they go down to South Texas, or they go to California, or wherever they go, Arizona. So I lose some momentum in the middle of the years at some point, and I get left with a smaller group. The smaller group is more difficult to motivate in a lot of cases, so hopefully I'm flexible enough that I can change my program. Then I have another problem that occurs right at this time of year where they all come back. And they dance down at these resort areas, very, very, very different than how I call at my home clubs. It's not I'm not saying they're better or worse. They're dramatically different. They're dancing in some cases 3 and 4 times a day, and they come back up to me, and it's completely different. Completely different. It takes me 3 or 4 weeks just to assimilate them again back into the way it was before they left. And that's troublesome. But again, I know that's going to happen, so I plan the 3 months, the dark, cold winter months. I plan those special. We have special nights. We have outings. We have things that are not critical to the progression of the year. And then at Easter, we start to draw the line again to the end of the year. So all I'm suggesting is that you take some time in advance to plan your year, plan your night, plan your tip. And it works out great. Does anybody have any questions of either Tony or I? Or comments? Actually, it's an open forum, so what we really want you to do, as the moderator, I insist that if you have comments that you'd like to add, now's the time to do it, because we're going to be leaving in another half an hour. So, does anybody have any comments or questions of Tony? Like, is there really 4 parts to do-so-do? Okay.
I have a question on this musical device you were speaking of earlier. It was this, you used to call it an xylophone?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what did you...
I don't know what it was.
There was something... It sounded like you called it an xylophone.
On this?
Yeah, is that what it was?
I don't know. Is it an xylophone?
Well, I just never heard of an xylophone. I'm just curious.
You're making fun of me.
I was. I've heard of an egg.
Egg xylophone.
I've heard of an egg, and I've heard of a xylophone.
I don't know.
Never the two. Any questions? Seriously.
Rod, you have nothing to say. I've never seen you in one of these things with nothing to say, Rod.
I'll say something.
You sit in the front just so you can do this.
Just to give you a bad time. No, speaking of the thing, a lot of times the clubs ask you to do mixers and stuff. And one of the things I do is I do 2 couple slurs. And I can use 90% of the list with 2 couples. And they get excited about it.
Yeah, 2 couples is fun. You can theme on, I saw you have this down on your sheet, because you can make themes of the 2 couples, 6 couples. I don't know if you guys have ever done 6 couple stuff. The exploding square stuff. There's the other one.
Progressive squares?
Progressive squares, yeah. All of that is a theme, and it's amazing how so many of these things tie together. Theming and programming and showmanship all tie in together so well that it's hard to separate them sometimes. There was a hand up in the back.
While we were talking about the promenades, something that I do that's kind of fun is I'll have the 4-men reverse promenade, single file promenade. Tony was talking about couples promenading reverse, but one of the things, if you have the 4-men reverse promenade, that means they're going to go into their left inside the girls. Lots of guys step in there and go backwards, turn around and start backing up. It's kind of comical to watch, but you have them reverse promenade, and you can walk right into an Allemand left from there. No trouble at all. People get that without any problem at all. Another thing Tony was mentioning about right and left grand. Were you talking about right and left grand? No, you weren't. I wanted to. Right and left grand, a lot of times I can modify, and I've been pretty successful with it if you again, depending on how the night's going. I'll do like an Allemand left, turn through with the partner, go back to the corner, and do a left and right grand, I'll say to people. I don't think it's really a call, but I didn't think that Dos a Do had 4 parts either, so when you...
so we both learned something.
We both learned something. So I'll say, left pull by, go forward. If you don't say go forward, they'll do an Allemand left. I learned that, something that I learned. But I can say do a left and right grand, go forward left, forward right, forward left, pull by with your partner, Allemand left. And, it's a little bit different. They get a kick out of that.
You can actually theme a tip on right and left grand. You have every resolution be a right and left grand resolution. On another tip, have every resolution be an at-home resolution. So one of the exciting things about it is, especially the home stuff, is when the dancers think they see it coming. So give them a whole tip of it. Give them a whole tip of right and left grands. Give them a whole tip of weave the rings, maybe. The point is that you want to make the tips different. You want to make something stand out about the dance, about the tip, about the year, perhaps. You can micromanage it all the way down. The whole point is you want it different. You don't want it to be the same old thing. You listen to the dancers. Their biggest complaint is that it's boring. And our solution to boring, is that we teach the next program. And that doesn't seem to be working. I mean, we can go ahead and continue to do that. However, our clubs aren't overflowing, and every festival I know is going downhill pretty much, except for a couple. But give some thought to adding some variety to your program by just offering themes. Theming the dance. Have a Valentine's dance. That's different. You can theme it choreographically. Don't get too technical. I said earlier, don't get too hard, because the majority of the dancers really do not want difficulty. They really don't. They just want a little different. They don't want to square through, 4 swing through, boy run, Ferris wheel all night. But they don't want to do some of the other stuff we give them either. So anything in moderation. And you can theme anything, guys. It doesn't have to be difficult. All it's got to do is be different.
What we're talking about, I do a theme, and this doesn't work for everybody, but because I'm a guffaw guy, everybody knows when they come to my dances, one of the things that I really spend a lot of time doing is trying to get them to laugh with me, or laugh at me for that matter. I've been very, very successful, thankfully, with dealing with humor. And this is not for everybody. Humor is something that you either are good at naturally or you're not. And I know that in most cases, that's something I know about my personality, is that I'm able to deal with humor. And I don't really want to talk too much about this and give you any indication that a good thing to use is humor, because it's potentially devastating. I've seen callers actually make an attempt at being humorous, and it just backfired. Explode. I've seen them literally explode. And it's a mess. But I have been successful, and I got to tell you, it's the same old jokes, the same situations. I do them over and over, and people still laugh at them. Thankfully, I move around and don't call the same place twice. I never get booked back. Anyways, but the humor part of it for me is something that I know that I have a handle on, and I know that I do fairly well. Anyways, one of those things I do resolving to home, because I can have fun with them, I'll resolve them to home 5 or 6 times, and I'll say, "You're home," clap, 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 or whatever, and they realize that I'm going to resolve them to home every single time. They know that. And then at some point, I'll resolve everybody to home, but I'll have the sides crossed. Or the first time, I actually follow a pattern. I'll tell you my pattern, but if you ever come to a dance, you have to act surprised. And then this is being taped. This could destroy this, but I'll resolve everybody to home, but a quarter out. I'll have them out 1/4, and I'll say, you're home. And they love to say, no way, we're not home. And I'll look down at my page, and I'll say, oh, it's because I turned my page 1/4. And they laugh, sort of. Then I go through some more calling, and I resolve them to home again, but this time I'll have maybe the heads home, but the sides crossed. And they just love to yell out that they're not home. Actually, I watched a caller at home. You might know this fella, Jim Lee. Jim did this one time, and I don't know whether he did it on purpose or not, but I thought it was just absolutely hilarious. I happened to be dancing at the time, and he resolved people to different places. The sides were always crossed. He kept crossing the sides, and people kept going, yeah, and he'd tell him not to change it, he'll fix it, and he'd keep changing the side, keeping the sides crossed. And they would, no, you're still not right, and then finally he got it right at the end. So I did it. I just took it a little step further. I'd resolve everybody to home, and then I'd have the sides out, or a quarter out, then a half out. Then I'd put all the 4 boys together and all 4 girls together, get them all at their home, and I'd say, you're all home, and they'd laugh. They know I was being silly, and then I'd get them finally home, and they'd go ballistic. They just loved it. And it wasn't as if they didn't know I was going to do that, but they just loved that type of thing. And I get them home, and it's kind of fun. That's just some of the things that you have to be there. Yeah, it's a location thing.
I saw Larry Letson do the same routine.
Yeah, he got it from me, as a matter of fact.
Except he'd put the boys together at the heads and the side, and the girls together at the sides. He'd say, "You're home." They'd say, "No, no, no." And then he had it set up beforehand. He had, if you're a boy and there's a girl on your right, roll her away, and then everybody was actually home at that point. It was kind of neat. Any questions? Comments? You're going to get an early break if you don't have something, guys, because we're out of material here.
Jerry.
Here we go. Come up to the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Marty, Stonebridge. Jerry and I sometimes play games with the dancers when we choose a tip in the evening, like cowboys or trains or moons or something like that. We'll tell them at the beginning of the dance that there's a theme to the evening and let them try to guess it. You know, sometimes some of them are subtle and you can take a little time. Obviously, the second time you do a moon song, they kind of get the picture, or a train song. That's another thing that plays.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
The other thing that I want to touch on, too, just thinking about that, is when you're calling together with another caller, if it's not really a theme, I guess, but it is something that we do that's hopefully it's partly pre-planned. One call about if you're comfortable enough to, you do a call, I do a call. But one of the things that I do with callers, especially callers like when I work with a caller in a local festival and he's a local caller, and sometimes these guys they're great guys. I love all these guys, and I enjoy working with them immensely, but sometimes they feel intimidated unnecessarily to be on the stage with me. So I try to make them feel at home. So I'll say to them, hey, let's do, you get them in, I get them out. So they'll get them in, and I'll get them out a couple times over, and then I make a big production about having the guy turn around. So I'll say, turn around, face the back, just follow this in your mind, and they'll start calling along. And then at some point, I'll call a call that takes a few seconds for the dancers to do, and I lower the microphone, I lean over to the guy who's sweating buckets because I'm expecting him to follow through, and I'll say, I'm going to leave him looking right at your corner. And then I'll call along, and hopefully he hears that and understands that. And then I'll say, okay, I'll leave him out. Dancers really don't know that they're looking at their corner at that point. And then I'll say, okay, you get him out. And hopefully he just says a la man left. But occasionally I've had a caller actually decide that I'm going to do a sequence before I call a la man left. And that doesn't always work. But in fact, most guys, almost everybody, will say a la man left. And what a reaction that gets from the dancers. Dancers really don't know that we've pre-planned that. They really aren't sure that they're looking right at their corner because they have no situational awareness necessarily. And afterwards, they come up and they'll ask if it was pre-planned, and the caller that I call with actually can say, no, it wasn't pre-planned, because it really wasn't pre-planned. If they ask me, I lie to them. And they think their caller is absolutely amazing. And it's just, if you're afraid, and I've learned again, if you're afraid that he may not understand the concept, or he or she may not understand the concept of, I'm going to leave you looking right at your corner, and believe it or not, there are callers out there who did not get the concept of, I'm going to leave them looking right at your corner. I'll say to them at the beginning of the tip, let's do this thing, it's fun, and I'm going to have you turn around and we'll do this. And all I want you to say, I'll say, is a la man left. And sometimes they still won't do it, but 99% of the time it works. And dancers just love that stuff. They honestly do love that stuff. Anything else?
Anybody else has any ideas?
You get a break. See it at 7 for the banquet.
Thank you very much for coming out.
Who's the first pattern record used?